everybody, Young Grasshopper here. Welcome to the Cliffside Bunker in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And this is another video in my series I'm calling Tips, Tricks, and Tidbits. And here I want to make a suggestion. Maybe you want to implement it into your games. And let's get started. I've created a little bit of a scenario here with Japan going into China. Whether this is possible or not doesn't really matter. I'm using my initial setup, but created a bit of scenario here in China. Let's take a look here, these units. But here on the map we have all these territories which are originally controlled by China but occupied by Japan to begin the game, and that's why you've got that different colorization. It can be confusing to some people, but the more you play, the more that you don't focus so much on the colorization as much as what's really important in regarding to the rules, and that is who is the original controller of the territory. But nonetheless, to begin the game, we don't bother putting Japanese roundels on all these. The colorization difference is enough to show that they do belong to Japan to begin the game. And as Japan advances through China, they'll put their roundels, of course, on these territories as they go. Now I've got a stack of Chinese infantry here and a stack of Japanese infantry here. Now as soon as as soon as China comes in here to attack, to take away one of these coastal territories here, maybe they bring in the aircraft. Say for example they wipe out all these infantry and they're left with one, and the fighter flies back. All right, so now China controls this. All right, now a lot of people, even in my own group, will say just put a China marker there. Well, the Chinese roundel is already there, right? So they control their own territory. They've gotten that back. At this point, as soon as something like this happens, whether it's this territory, whatnot, what I suggest is now going ahead and doing that with Japan and putting the roundels now on those coastal territories that they control still. And the reason why I do this is because, for example, if China controls this, let's say all this is in here, and Japan comes back with this, and again, the scenario is not really the important thing. What I'm trying to get at is if all this is wiped out with all of this and it's bare, if you're not doing anything like this, it now becomes confusing as to which country controls it. It's got the colorization, which is confusing. It's got the roundel, which is confusing. But in a clean sweep or in a clean wipeout where both sides are destroyed there, the last controller of the territory still controls it, in which case it was China. So now both powers have lost all their units in that battle, and China still controls it. If we don't have the Japan markers along here like I suggest, then it gets a little confusing. Now if Japan ended up taking that back, they could do this. Now, leaving the coastal territories as they are to begin the game is more than fine. However, once the Allies take back or liberate any of these, I suggest putting down the Japanese markers on all the controlled territories they still control, because throughout the game and else in other places, it's always the original controller. If there's no controlling marker that suggests that an enemy controls it or a different power controls it, then it should always be the original marker. A lot of my friends in my group say just put a Chinese marker there if they control it. And that to me seems silly, seeing as there's already a roundel there. Plus, the proper way that I believe to do it is to put markers on the Chinese territories that Japan controls. They're the occupying power, right? And as the Allies continue this, oh, just put a Chinese marker on it, just put a Chinese marker on it. Then they get down to 3 territories that don't have, for example, then you get into this where China's putting theirs down and then there's no Japan roundels. Well, it looks like China roundel, China. I mean, you see where doing one thing one way can cause more confusion down the road than doing it the other way. So that's my trick. That's my suggestion. As soon as one of these original controlled Chinese territories go back to China, whether it be a UK or an American liberation, it will always go back to China. Don't put down a China roundel. Put down the Japanese roundels on the territories that they still control. That's my suggestion. That's my trick. That's my tidbit. That's my tip. Alright guys, hopefully that was helpful. Take care. Cheers. May all your worlds be one.